close your eyes and picture this. Waking up before dawn on Saturday, racing to the telly in your pajamas, and fighting your siblings for the spot closest to the screen because cartoons only came on once a week. Walking out the door at 8 in the morning and not coming home until the streetlights came on. No one worried, no one was tracking you. Sitting in a demountable classroom that was freezing in winter and baking in summer, drinking warm milk from a tiny glass bottle at recess. If you grew up in Australia in the 1970s, you lived through something that simply does not exist anymore. Not just a different decade, but a completely different way of being a kid. Today, we are looking at 12 things every Australian child of the 1970s will remember. Things that shaped us, defined us, and vanished so completely that kids today would not believe they were real.
Saturday morning was sacred. You would wake up early, earlier than any school day, creep out to the lounge room in your pajamas, and turn on the telly. Channel 7 or Channel 9, that was it. And from about 7 until midday, cartoons. The Flintstones, Scooby-Doo, Speed Racer, Hong Kong Phooey, Fat Albert. You would sit there, cross-legged on the carpet, sometimes still in yesterday's clothes if you had slept over at a mate's place, and you would watch. There was no remote, so someone had to get up to change the channel if the reception went fuzzy. You would adjust the rabbit ears on top of the set, twist them around until the picture cleared up. You could not record it, you could not pause it. If you missed an episode, that was it, gone. So you planned your whole Saturday morning around it. No sleeping in, no mucking about. Cartoons were on, and you were there. Your mum would eventually yell at you to get dressed, go outside, do something useful. But until then, Saturday morning cartoons were everything. Between shows, ads for toys you would never get, Barbie dream houses, Hot Wheels tracks, board games that looked amazing on television but were always disappointing in real life. You would beg your parents anyway. And when the cartoons finished at midday, the magic was over. The ABC would start showing some boring documentary about farming, or the news would come on and you would be kicked outside. Today, kids can watch cartoons anytime, anywhere. Streaming services, tablets, phones, it is endless, on demand, and somehow completely joyless. The anticipation is gone, the event is gone. Saturday morning cartoons were not just entertainment, they were a ritual, a shared experience that every Australian kid of the 70s had in common. And when they disappeared, replaced by 24-hour, 7-day access to everything, we lost something. That feeling of waiting, of something being special because it was rare.
Kids roam free all day without mobile phones. This is the one people talk about the most, the freedom. You would leave the house after breakfast, maybe grab your bike, and you would be gone all day. No mobile phones, no GPS tracking, no parents texting you every half hour, asking where you are. You just went. Down to the park, to the creek, over to your mate's place 3 streets away. You would ride your bike for kilometers, explore the bush, build cubby houses out of sticks and old sheets. If you got thirsty, you might drink from someone's garden hose. If you got hungry, you would knock on a mate's door and their mum would make you a Vegemite sandwich. Your parents did not know where you were, and they did not need to. The rule was simple. Be home when the streetlights come on. That was it. No check-ins, no panicked phone calls. You were trusted to figure it out, to stay out of trouble, to come home in one piece. And mostly, you did. Sure, kids got into scrapes. You would fall off your bike, scrape your knee, maybe get chased by a dog. But you learned to navigate, to problem solve, to handle yourself. There was no bubble wrapping, no helicopter parenting. You were independent because you had to be. Today, letting a 10-year-old wander around unsupervised would get you reported to child services. We have traded freedom for safety, independence for control. And maybe that is necessary. Maybe the world is more dangerous now, or maybe we are just more aware of the dangers that were always there, but something was lost. That sense of adventure, of discovering your neighborhood on your own terms, of coming home with dirt on your knees and stories to tell. For kids in the 70s, the world was big and open and it was yours to explore, and you did not need a phone to do it. Every school had them. Demountables, portable classrooms dropped onto the edge of the playground because the school was overcrowded and there was no money for proper buildings. They were supposed to be temporary, but they stayed for years, sometimes decades. Demountables were brutal. In summer, they would bake like ovens. 40-degree days, no air conditioning, just a couple of sad ceiling fans pushing hot air around. You would sit there, uniform sticking to your back, sweat dripping onto your workbook, trying to concentrate while the teacher droned on. The walls were thin, so you could hear every noise from outside, kids playing, birds squawking, the hum of lawnmowers. In winter, they were freezing. No insulation, gaps in the walls where the wind would whistle through. You would sit there in your jumper, hands numb, breath visible, wishing you were in one of the real classrooms in the main building. The floor was always a bit wobbly, and if someone stomped hard enough, the whole thing would shake. But here is the weird part. We did not complain. Or if we did, it did not matter. That was just how it was. You got used to it. The demountable became part of the school experience, as normal as the playground or the canteen. You would have your lessons, do your work, and eventually you would move on to the next year, and maybe, if you were lucky, you would get a real classroom. Today, schools still use demountables, but they are better built, better insulated, more comfortable. Back in the 70s, they were rough, basic, barely fit for purpose, but they got the job done. And for kids who spent a year or two in one, the memory sticks. That stifling heat, that bitter cold, the sense that you were learning in a glorified shed. It was not ideal, but it was ours. Decimal currency came to Australia in 1966, but by the 70s, people were still getting used to it. Your grandparents, maybe even your parents, would slip up and talk about pounds, shillings, and pence. They would say something cost 5 bob, and you would have no idea what they meant. At school, they taught you the new system. Dollars and cents, simple, logical, easy to understand. But out in the real world, older people were still doing the conversion in their heads. The corner shop owner would mutter about how much easier it was before. Your nan would hand you 20 cents and tell you that used to be 2 shillings, as if that meant anything to you. You would find old coins sometimes tucked away in drawers or dropped behind furniture. Pennies the size of biscuits, thick and heavy. Sixpences, tiny silver coins with a kangaroo on them. Shillings with coats of arms. They were relics, leftovers from a system that did not make sense anymore. You could not spend them, but you would keep them anyway. They felt important, historical, like holding a piece of the past. The changeover was not smooth. Prices felt strange, unfamiliar. Things that used to cost a certain amount in pounds suddenly cost something else in dollars, and people were not sure if they were getting ripped off or not. There was confusion, frustration, a sense that something had been lost in the translation. But by the end of the 70s, decimal currency was just currency. The old system faded into memory, and kids growing up did not know any different. Dollars and cents were normal, obvious, the only thing that made sense. But for those who lived through the changeover, there was always a little bit of nostalgia for the old coins, the old system, the way things used to be. The trauma of swimming carnivals in Speedos. Swimming carnivals were mandatory. Every school had them, usually once a year, held at the local pool. And if you were a boy, you wore Speedos. Not board shorts, not trunks. Speedos, tiny, tight, leaving absolutely nothing to the imagination. You would stand there on the edge of the pool, shivering, goosebumps all over, feeling completely exposed. Every flaw, every bit of puppy fat, Every awkward angle of your prepubescent body was on full display. And if you were unlucky enough to have hit a growth spurt or not hit one yet, it was even worse. You were either gangly and awkward or small and underdeveloped, and everyone could see. The races themselves were fine. You would dive in, swim your laps, try not to come last. But the waiting, the standing around in those bloody Speedos, that was the trauma. Girls had one-piece swimsuits, still modest, still covered. Boys had nothing. If you forgot your swimmers and had to borrow a pair from lost property, God help you. They would be too big or too small, faded, saggy, and you would spend the whole day trying to keep them from falling off. Swimming carnivals were not about fun. They were about house points, school spirit, competition. Teachers would yell encouragement, parents would cheer from the sidelines, and you would just want it to be over so you could put your clothes back on. There was no opting out, no saying you did not feel like it. You were there, you were racing, and you were doing it in Speedos. Today, kids wear board shorts, rash shirts, whatever they want. There is more awareness of body image, more sensitivity to how uncomfortable it can be to be exposed like that. But in the 70s, no one cared. You wore what you were told, and if you were embarrassed, that was your problem. Swimming carnivals in Speedos were a rite of passage, a shared humiliation that bonded every Australian schoolboy of that era. Shops didn't stay open all day on Saturdays. They'd close at 12:30, 1 o'clock at the latest, and that was it. If you needed something after lunch on a Saturday, bad luck. You'd have to wait until Monday. Closed. It sounds insane now, but that's how it worked. Saturday morning was for shopping. You'd go with your mum to the butcher, the baker, the greengrocer, grab what you needed for the week. But by midday, everything shut down. The shopkeepers went home, the streets went quiet, and you were expected to have planned ahead. If you forgot to buy milk, bread, or anything else, you'd have to borrow from a neighbour or go without. Sunday was even worse. Absolutely nothing was open. No shops, no supermarkets, no servos. Sundays were for church, for family, for rest. The whole country shut down, and you adjusted to it. Late night shopping was introduced toward the end of the 70s. Thursday or Friday nights, shops would stay open until 9, and it was treated like an event. Families would go out, wander through the shops, maybe grab a milkshake afterward. It felt modern, exciting, like Australia was finally catching up to the rest of the world. But for most of the decade, shopping was confined to strict hours. You couldn't just pop out whenever you felt like it. You had to plan, to think ahead, to make sure you had everything you needed before the shops closed. It was inconvenient, sure, but it also meant shopkeepers had lives. They had time off, time with their families, time to rest. There was a rhythm to it, a sense that commerce had its place, and then life had its place. Now shops are open 24. You can buy anything, anytime, anywhere. It's convenient, but we've lost something. That forced pause, that moment when the whole country stopped and just existed. One telephone for the whole family. The phone was attached to the wall, usually in the hallway, sometimes in the kitchen. It was heavy, beige or brown, with a curly cord that got tangled no matter what you did. And there was one for the whole family. If you wanted to call someone, you had to wait your turn. If your dad was on the phone, you sat there, annoyed, until he hung up. If your sister was having a long conversation with her friend, you would hover nearby, making faces, trying to hurry her along. There was no privacy. Everyone could hear everything. Dialing a number took time. You would stick your finger in the hole of the rotary dial, spin it around, wait for it to return, then do the next number. If you messed up halfway through, you had to start again. Long-distance calls cost a fortune, so you kept them short. And if someone was on the phone, that was it. No call waiting, no voicemail, no way to get through. You just had to wait. Teenagers hated it. You would get a call from a friend, and your mum would answer, interrogate them, then yell at you to come to the phone. By the time you got there, half the conversation was already over. And if you wanted privacy, you would stretch that curly cord as far as it would go, duck into the nearest room, and hope no one could hear you. The phone was a family tool, not a personal device. It sat there on the wall, a portal to the outside world, but it was shared, controlled, and definitely not something you carried in your pocket. If you were out and needed to call home, you would find a payphone, shove in 20 cents, and make it quick. Today, everyone has their own phone. Kids as young as 10 walk around with smartphones, instant access to everyone, everywhere. The convenience is undeniable, but so is the loss. The phone used to be an event. Now it is just background noise. No seatbelts in the back seat. This one's hard to believe, but it's true. In the 70s, seatbelts in the back seat weren't mandatory. In fact, a lot of cars didn't even have them. You'd pile into the back of the Holden or the Falcon, 3, 4, sometimes 5 kids squashed together, and off you'd go. No child seats, no booster seats, no rules. Babies sat on laps. Toddlers stood up in the back, peering over the front seat. Older kids would fight for the window spot, elbowing each other, claiming territory. And if your dad had a ute, you'd ride in the tray, standing up, holding onto the side, wind in your face, feeling invincible. Long road trips were chaos. Kids bouncing around, fighting, spilling things, no one strapped in. If your dad had to brake suddenly, you'd go flying forward, slam into the back of the front seat, and get yelled at for not holding on properly. It was dangerous, reckless, and completely normal. Seatbelt laws for the front seat came in during the 70s, but it took years before the back seat caught up. By the 80s, it was mandatory everywhere, and suddenly the back seat felt cramped, restricted, safer. Today, the idea of driving without seatbelts is unthinkable. Kids are strapped into 5-point harnesses, booster seats until they're 12, and every trip is carefully planned for maximum safety. It's better, obviously. Fewer injuries, fewer deaths. But there was something about the chaos of the back seat in the 70s, the freedom of it, that felt like childhood in its purest form. Wild, unsupervised, and somehow we survived. Every day at recess, you would get a small glass bottle of milk. It was about 1/3 of a pint with a foil cap you peeled off. The milk arrived at school in crates, often left out in the sun, and by the time you drank it, it was warm, sometimes warm enough that the cream separated and sat at the top in thick yellowish clumps. You did not have a choice. The teacher handed them out and you drank it. If you complained, you were told it was good for you, full of calcium and building strong bones. Never mind that it tasted awful, lukewarm and slightly off. You would hold your nose, chug it down, and try not to gag. In winter it was better. The milk would be cold, sometimes even icy, and it actually tasted decent. But in summer it was torture. You opened that little bottle, smelled the warmth, saw the cream floating on top, and every instinct told you not to drink it. But you did, because that is what you were supposed to do. The school milk program was supposed to improve nutrition, to make sure every kid got their dairy. And maybe it worked, but mostly it is remembered as one of those bizarre things schools made you do that no one questioned. Warm milk at recess every single day, whether you liked it or not. By the early 1980s, the program was phased out. Funding dried up, health guidelines changed, and suddenly no more school milk. Kids today have no idea what they missed, or maybe what they were spared. When your family went on holiday, someone always brought the camera. And after you got home, after the film had been sent off and developed, after the photos came back in their little envelope, your parents would organise a slideshow night. The projector would come out, dusty and slightly temperamental. Your dad would set it up in the lounge room, thread the slides into the carousel, and turn off the lights. Then, one by one, the photos would appear on the wall or on a pull-down screen if your family was fancy. Blurry shots of the beach, your mum squinting in the sun, your brother pulling a stupid face, a random photo of a car park that no one remembered taking, and you'd have to sit there, watch the whole thing, every single slide, while your dad provided commentary. "That's the big banana," he'd say, as if you hadn't been there. "That's your cousin, remember?" No, we don't remember, but we'd nod anyway. Slideshows were long, tedious, and unavoidable. If relatives came over, they'd be subjected to it too. Your nan would sit there squinting at the screen, asking who everyone was. Your uncle would make jokes, and the kids would fidget, bored out of their minds, waiting for it to be over. But here's the thing. Those slideshows were how you remembered holidays. The photos were real, physical, something you could hold. And even though sitting through a slideshow was torture, there was something special about it. The whole family together, reliving the trip, laughing at the bad photos, remembering the good moments. Today, we take thousands of photos on our phones. They sit in a cloud somewhere, never printed, never looked at. There's no slideshow night, no event, no ritual. Holidays are documented endlessly, but somehow they're less remembered. Christmas beetles and cicadas everywhere. Summer in the 70s wasn't just hot, it was loud. Cicadas in the trees, deafening and relentless. They were the soundtrack to every backyard cricket game, every barbecue, every lazy afternoon. And Christmas beetles everywhere, big, shiny and clumsy, would fly into lights, crash into windows, land in your hair. You would find them on the ground in the morning, dead or dying, their iridescent shells glinting in the sun. Kids would collect them, line them up, sometimes even keep them in jars for a day or two before they inevitably died. They were just part of summer, as normal as sunburn and sticky flypaper. Cicadas were different. You could not catch them, but you could hear them. That rising, buzzing drone would start in the morning, peak in the afternoon, and fade by evening. It was so loud you could not hear yourself think. So constant, you stopped noticing it. Until it stopped. And then the silence was eerie, almost unnatural. But somewhere along the way, the Christmas beetles disappeared. You still see cicadas, you still hear them in summer, but the beetles are rare now. Scientists think it is habitat loss, pesticides, changes in the environment. Whatever the reason, they are gone, and with them, a piece of Australian summer. For kids of the 70s, Christmas beetles were part of the experience. You did not think about them much, but they were there, glittering and clumsy, crashing into everything. Now, when you see one, it feels like a memory, a reminder of summers that were louder, brighter, more alive. Reading the TV guide to plan your week. The TV guide was essential. A little magazine published weekly that listed every single show on every channel. You would sit down with it, usually on Sunday, and plan your week. What was on Monday night, what you would watch on Thursday, what movie was screening on the weekend. There was no streaming, no recording, no on-demand anything. If you wanted to watch something, you had to be there, sitting in front of the telly at the exact time it aired. So you planned. You circled the shows you did not want to miss. You negotiated with your siblings over who got to control the remote. You made sure you would be home when your favourite program was on. And if you missed it, that was it. No catch-up, no second chance. You missed it, and you would have to wait until it was repeated, which might be months away or never. The TV guide was how you navigated that. It was your map, your schedule, your lifeline. Families would argue over it. Mum wanted to watch her soapy, Dad wanted the news, the kids wanted cartoons. Someone had to compromise, and usually it was the kids. Today, we do not need TV guides. We scroll through apps, binge entire seasons, watch whatever we want, whenever we want. It is freedom, but it is also chaos. There is no shared experience anymore, no moment when the whole country is watching the same thing. In the 70s, TV was an event, something you planned for, something that brought families together, even if it was just to argue over what to watch. And the TV guide made it all possible. 12 things, 12 memories, all gone. Growing up in Australia in the 1970s was not perfect. It was chaotic, unsupervised, sometimes uncomfortable. But it was real. It was ours. We had freedom, adventure, and a sense that the world was big and waiting to be explored. We drank warm milk, wore Speedos, and survived without seatbelts. We watched cartoons like they were precious, roamed the streets until dark, and listened to cicadas all summer long. Life has moved on. Technology, safety, convenience, we have gained so much. But we have lost something too. That sense of simplicity, of being present, of childhood being something that happened outside, not on a screen. So tell us, which of these do you remember most? Which one takes you right back to being a kid in the 70s? Drop your answer in the comments, mate. This has been Retro Australia, where the past never really leaves us.